Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a conversation we're having today about the Paston Footprints Project. I'm joined by Dr. Rob Nee of the Paston Heritage Society. Hello, Rob.
Hi.
And Dr. Karen Smyth, Senior Lecturer in Literature at UEA. And the one thing they both, well, they have many things in common, but one of the things they have in common is they are co-directors of the Paston Footprints Project, which has been made possible by the National Lottery. And we're going to have a chat about some of the aspects of the project and see where it leads. So, last week, Norfolk Record Office released a video for the project called Meet the Pastons. It's clearly a significant part of Norfolk's history, the Paston family. Why do they fascinate you so much? Shall we start with Karen?
Thank you, Gary. Yes, the Pastons fascinate me because they provide first-hand testimonies of what it was like to live here in Norfolk during some of the most tumultuous periods of history, the bubonic plague, the Wars of the Roses. And unlike a lot of the archives that we have, they're not mediated. This is the real life accounts of people, and we can start to see the personalities emerge. They are the collection of earliest letters in the world that show you that kind of family communication. And so it's history beyond the kings and queens. It's what it was like to be a person here at that time. I also have a slight literary interest. They're big patrons of writers of the day, and they collect loads of different kinds of documents and books. And what I'm interested in is, how do people relate to them today? How do they tell the stories? How does it capture the public's imagination? Because it really shows us how early archives can be important here in the 21st century.
Absolutely, yes. And how about you, Rob? What attracts you to them?
Thank you, Gary. I think there's so much to learn. I think that's what I find about them, so much fascination, because every time I look at a letter, I learn something new about relationship between the writer and the receiver of the letter. Where were they? What was happening at the time? Why was the letter written? Who transcribed it? And all those kind of things. There's just a never-ending pool of information that comes out of each of the letters. And obviously, living in North Norfolk, I'm also fascinated about how much of the county it reveals about where they are, what land they owned, what journeys they made. So it's really all of those things. And I suppose on top of it, it's a kind of Norfolk treasure. We've got a lot of treasures in Norfolk.
Certainly is. Yeah.
This is to me a treasure.
Yeah. So clearly, Rob, you're quite a fan of the letters. So, which is your favourite?
Well, I thought about this long and hard because there are so many I could have chosen, but I think the one that always strikes me with excitement is the first one in the Whirlpool of Misadventures. That's the third set of letters, edited by Jean Agnew. And the first letter, written in April 1663, John Clayton, Robert Paston's brother-in-law, writing to him from Italy with hot news about a secret of alchemy discovered at the bottom of the well. And I just love this image. Although when you read it through, it says, I've got this fantastic news and I can't wait to tell you all about it. It's the alchemy secret we've been waiting for. It's in this thing at the bottom of the well, soldered up and covered in gold. But then he goes on to say, I'll come to Paris for the rest of the year and then I should be with you the following year. So I'm just thinking, poor old Robert Paston's thinking, you know, this is the secret to all my scientific discoveries, but I've got another 18 months to wait for it. But in terms of actually setting the scene as an exciting prospect, then I like that one very much.
Okay, yes, leaving somebody on tenterhooks for a very long time. So how about you, Karen? What's your favourite?
Oh, it did feel like asking. Yes, it did feel like asking who's your favourite child if you have hundreds and hundreds of them. But I think it has to be one of the medieval letters. And it's one edited by Davies, letter 121. It's from Elizabeth Poynings to Agnes Paston. In her letter, there's one in particular from the 3rd of January 1459, where we suddenly see her talk in legal terms about wills and probates. showing us that the women understood how to do economic business affairs. And a historian would get very excited about that. She's trying to claim 100 marks from her father's will, basically, trying to get her mother to give her that money so that she can marry who she wants to marry. But remember, this is a relationship where she and her mother don't get on. And yet, if you listen to the opening of her letter, you think, whoa, she's kind of crafty and quite wily, because she's ever so different to her mother. And she begins, "Right worshipful and my most entirely beloved mother, in the most lowly manner, I recommend me unto your good motherhood." This is a mother, by the way, who beats her daughter, so that's a bit questionable. "Beseeching you daily and nightly of your motherly blessing, ever more desiring to hear of your welfare and prosperity, the which I pray God to continue and increase to your heart's desire. And if it liketh your good motherhood to hear of me and how I do," if you actually want to be bothered about me, she's saying here, "I, at the making of this letter, am in good health of body." And it's just those little character flashes.
Yeah, so showing that education, but also something which is still relevant today, in the fact that, you know, if you were writing a similar letter, you'd use different words, but you might use similar tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's one of the things which I'm going to ask you about next, really. So, you know, what's the relevance of the Pastons to the general public today? Why should it fascinate them? What do you think that connection is between then and now?
All of those things, definitely, and obviously the fact that here's a family 600 years ago, and many of the struggles and problems and joys are resonant with us, and we can identify with them. But I think it's also the fact that there are, back to my first point, to think about it's a storehouse of information. Now, I know not everybody wants to know about agriculture in the 15th century, but if you did, then by reading the letters, you can piece together an enormous amount about how they did live and what life was like in Norfolk in those years. What were they harvesting? What kind of prices did they get for their crops? And then war comes along. How did they cope with the Wars of the Roses? At first glance, you think, well, Norfolk was pretty well untouched by the Wars of the Roses, a big event, and nothing happened much in Norfolk. But actually, when you read the letters, it did touch people's lives. Of course, it was a civil war, and it almost tells you more than the textbooks do, because it gives an insight into the kind of day-to-day impact of lawlessness, which is what was going on. So it's those kind of insights into events that were going on that I think is unparalleled, really, because the letters, it's always a letter that tells you so much about. I think I'm a family historian, and I find if I have a letter, I've got the best possible resource for the kind of information I want about what was going on then. And I think that the Pastons is one great big letter about what was going on in the 15th century, and of course the other sets of letters in later periods.
Yeah, because even finding that sort of detail nowadays, in the more recent past, can be very, very challenging, can't you? About that interfamily connection. So, you know, finding it from that period, well, as we all know, they're quite important, these letters, aren't they? So, obviously, this is part of a whole series of events which have been going on for a number of years now, but leading up to an exhibition and a series of talks which we're holding at the Record Office. But how did it start? How did the Paston Footprint project come about, and what did you set out to achieve? So I'll ask Rolf that first.
Yeah, well, it's the NRO's fault, I think, probably, because we had a very good exhibition in 2013. The Pastons and the Pursuit of Power, which was a great success on many levels. And I think I'd met Karen through that, really. And we were basically, I think, walking past the exhibition and carelessly said to each other, yeah, this is the beginning of something, isn't it? And we then decided we'd see if we could move on from this. And about 3 years it took to get the right people, the right partnerships, the right ideas about how on earth could you cope with such an enormous subject and make a meaningful project out of it. I mean, would you only scratch the surface, or could you find something that would resonate with your audience? And we were certainly asked when we went to the lottery, by people who knew what good questions to ask. Now, why would anybody be interested in the Paston letters? And we had to find a convincing answer. But I think it's really that meeting Karen and I and the people we managed to work with since that allowed us to make this project happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds very good. And I know it's been an important part of the project. There's the perception of the Pastons as the medieval family, isn't there? And I think it's such an important part of this project has been spreading that so it's much, much wider.
You are raising a very important point there, Gary, because that is one of our key mission. We've kind of got three key mission steps in this project. One mission is to tell people this is a 15th, 16th and 17th century story. It actually begins in the 14th and goes into the 18th. But it's nearly 400 years worth of a story. And the exciting news is that the 16th and 17th century letters, most of them are sitting here in Norfolk, in the Norfolk Record Office. We kind of think of the medieval ones being housed in the British Library and a few other places, but they're actually here, sitting here in the office. And we kind of thought, okay, how do we join the dots together of this long story? We need to tell the full story. And so the exhibition that's coming up is really that mark of telling the story in its entirety to the public for the first time. How do you join the dots of such a long period? And the answer is, as Rob's saying, it's through those letters. That's the hallmark. That's our evidence base, alongside the other kinds of documentary evidence and buildings and landscapes that we have, but the letters hold the key to that. And behind the letters is our second mission step, and that is, let's get the characters of the Pastons known, because you relate to history if you can hear somebody's story, if you can understand that. We do have the added problem of a lot of Margarets and Johns and Williams. They kind of like the same names, the Paston family. So we do have to kind of come up with taglines like Agnes, the first matriarch, or Edward Paston in the 17th century, you know, the recusant poet and music maker, that kind of thing. But we want to get the Pastons as people known. And then our third step has been very much picking up on what Rob was saying, that sense of partnering, to see who's invested in this story. Obviously the Norfolk Record Office, one of our main collaborators holding the archives, but also we've reached out to other kinds of partners such as Norfolk County Council to help people get walking in the actual landscapes with our heritage trails. We've reached out on social media and done a big campaign on Rebel Women that's got a lot of people excited about riding the Paston women back into history. And we've had so many different levels of support from local churches and history groups through to other major partners. It's that sense of, let's share this story, let people find the way they can access it and relate to it. And if we can facilitate that, then our mission and our project will have been achieved. Yeah.
Okay, splendid. So I've got to ask this really. There's been a lot of work done on the Pastons over these centuries. Have you found anything new?
New to us, and I think more importantly, perhaps new to the people we've been working with. So when we began the project, we identified the 10 places in Norfolk that were most heavily cited in the letters. So they were places with a real power base of Paston information. And when we started to talk to them, we realised that they didn't really know that either. So it was going to be helping them to discover. So, for example, at Gresham, there was a castle in the field. They would have known there was a castle. It was overgrown. It was a mound. That's probably all they knew. But what we've been able to do is to rebuild it in 3D with advice and research and present it to them and say, this is probably what it looked like. And that's the kind of discovery I think that people wanted. In North Walsham, we have, I think, discovered, in a sense, we've uncovered more information about the Pastons actually being involved in the 1381 rebellion, which was a slight surprise because we thought there were people who would keep out of things like that, but no, they're heavily involved in that. Blowfield, and Karen's touched on Edward Paston. I think the bringing forward of his character, his achievements and the life he lived is a discovery, in a sense that is now very much a reality, I think, for us. In Paston, again, we've rebuilt the hall, which was new to people there. We found inventories that described how Laboratory equipment was stored in the hall by Robert Paston, which throws a new light on exactly how far and wide his experiment. He was probably banished to Paston by his wife, I expect, because the Oxnead was filling up with test tubes and so on. Mortby, we discovered a great deal about how important Mortby and Caister were for the Paston's influence on Yarmouth. Oxnead, I think, is probably our best discovery in the sense we got a letter from a deep sea diver who told us about a Captain Robert Paston whose ship went down in 1711 off the coast of Nova Scotia. Now, he knew that, but I don't think we knew that in the UK, and so that's a new area for us to imagine this Paston going down with his ship in 1711. And I guess the other thing is that we've probably discovered new hubs, new centres of Paston interest that are probably outside of Norfolk, that are waiting for further discovery and development. So that's been an interesting aspect, that it's not just a Norfolk story, it's a story that actually has got tentacles right across this country.
Yeah. So the short answer would have been lots, really, wouldn't it? So is there anything which you can add to that list, Kat?
I think Rob's given a very comprehensive overview. The one extra thing I would add is that we've also had the opportunity to bring these archives into the public domain through the digitisation of the letters. So they're available on our website now for people to actually see and read different editions of them. In doing that, we've also identified more archives that aren't generally known as belonging to the Paston collection. There's an interesting collection of Robert Paston's later poems. There's also some documents that have come through from us from Fenn's descendants, the first editor of the letters, and the engagement diaries he had at the time he was editing the letters, and his Society of Antiquaries application. So there's peripheral archives emerging. We're still finding out these elements. There's also been some interesting work done by Dr. Jane Clayton, who's identified a new Paston female member of the family by tracing heraldry links and archive links. And there's this sense of there's so many of the stories that are sitting there hiding in plain sight in the archives that haven't been told yet. So I think that's what I would add to Rob's list.
Yes, the evidence is there, but somebody's got to create the history, haven't they?
Yeah,
somebody's got to write it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the project as a whole, what do you think the most significant outcomes of it have been? Shall we start with Rob?
I think slightly biased by what I've been most closely involved with, but I think the fact that there will be 8 walks in Norfolk that were waymarked clearly and supported by audio trails, information on the websites, activities and so on. I think that's a legacy that we're going to be very proud of, and an enormous amount of work has gone into it. The Heritage Action Zone project in North Walsham is another one where it happened to be a town that was asking itself, what is it special about this place, and what is it we can use to attract people to the town in the future? And the Paston story has emerged as one of the things, with our help, that they want to adopt. So that's another positive one. Excuse me. And then the educational resources on the website, again, I think are very strong, and they will be there for schools, scholars, families to use into the future. And I think that is another important legacy. So those are just 3. I mean, again, there are many more, but those are the 3 that I would be very keen to talk about to people.
Yeah. So, Karen, what for you have been the most significant outcomes of the project?
I think building on Rob's response about the heritage walks, we're at a really exciting moment where we're teaming up with different wellbeing organisations right across the county. Our aim is to explore with these wellbeing groups how to enhance the basic walking experience in ways that encourages participation and develops wellbeing benefits. There are so many benefits of storytelling and connection with place, and the Paston letters act as our cue for this. So we develop our walks according to different needs And one of the major outcomes is that the Paston story is now relevant for the heritage lovers who want to be led by historical characters on these walks. Also relevant for explorer families who want to experience the outstanding natural beauty of the Norfolk countryside. We have the quiet walks, which have deliberate well-being activities like meditations and increasing confidence and expression and connection with nature. But we always take our cues from the Paston letters, from the Paston story. So for instance, in Paston itself, we explore Margaret Paston's writings, which are filled with sensory detail. She writes in an incredibly vivid prose manner, and we encourage people to develop sensory writing skills and noticing skills while they're in and experiencing the walks. The aim is to encourage participation so that people feel that they're getting a chance to explore and tell the Paston story in the way they want to. Writing's not for everyone, and I'll just flag up that we also have a photography competition going. We're encouraging people to be mindful and connect with nature on these walks, connect with the Paston story, capture the spirit of Paston country. And one of the key things that we've mentioned so far in the talk today is how we are partnering with major organisations. These Paston walks are experiential. We partner with different organisations en route, so our competition prizes reflect that. We've had amazing donations from a whole host of different parties, such as Norfolk Museums giving us day passes to the museums across the region, through to Sainsbury's Centre giving us visual art exhibition tickets, but there's a whole host of different prizes, so do check that out, because that's one key output and aim of these walks, and that is to get people involved and participating for wellbeing benefits. I think in turn that leads on to a second outcome, and that would be the way in which the telling of the story has been shared with so many people. So we have just in the middle of doing a major social media campaign on the Rebel Paston women, and we've had people from all over the country and even somebody in Germany taking part. We've got people doing performances, podcasts. We've got the young people in the Heritage Youth Collection at the library doing zines. We've teamed up with Rosie's Plaques. Some of you might have noticed them appearing across the county now. And so we've got so many different people, different age groups, not just learning and receiving the information, but taking part in telling the 21st century chapter of the Paston story, and the ways in which a few people in these different hubs have kind of become our Paston champions now, and we're hopefully spreading the passion for more and more to be done even beyond the life of this project.
Yeah. Well, the research doesn't have to stop. The engagement doesn't have to stop, does it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. But a big part of the engagement coming up, of course, is an exhibition, which opens in August. So what should people expect from the exhibition?
Expect the unexpected. That's always a good tagline to use. It's an exhibition at the NRO, and you're going to find out new Paston stories. As we've been emphasising throughout this talk, we want to bring forward some of the key characters. We want to bring forward some of the material from the 16th and 17th century letters and set them in context with the medieval material. So the exhibition has several different parts. It begins exploring the kinds of evidence that we can use to tell the story, all the different kinds of documents, the archives, the wills, the legal material, through to the business transactions and the letters, but also, well, then what can we do with the buildings? What can we do with the music and different things that we've got? So that kind of interdisciplinary quality of researching this story. We then go on and we have to tell a story, and we tell the rise of the Pastons, but also the fall of the Pastons as well, because that speaks into everything from the Wars of the Roses through to bits of the Civil War, through to this notion of alchemy and the foolishness of it, through to what if you turn out to be a Roman Catholic during this Protestant community and sort of invest your money on the wrong side, those kinds of issues, what actually leads to the fall of the Pastons. But then we also have new research showing those building reconstructions, showing the mapping of the manners of the Pastons across the ages, through to other new research elements on foregrounding some of the rebel women. And of course, we also have a major focus on, well, how do you read between the lines? What do you do when you've got patchy evidence of, and you've got incomplete letters, or if you've got holes in the letters, and how do we actually kind of piece that together? So it's an exhibition that tells you the Paston story for the first time throughout all the centuries, but it also tells you the processes involved in trying to make this story and how can you actually do that. So that's basically what
there's a lot in it, isn't there? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, giving up.
Yeah. Yes. I have to give a special shout out, thanks to Jenny Watts at the NRO, who's really helped us with this exhibition, along with yourself and Nick, in helping us set it up. Yeah.
Well, it's been fun, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rob, Karen's told us a lot about what's going to be in the exhibition, but there's lots of other things beyond the exhibition, aren't there? So can you tell us about how people can participate beyond the exhibition?
I think in a general sense, what we've tried to do is to bring the Paston story through as a Norfolk story. So really, that's inviting everybody in Norfolk to contribute in any way they'd like to. So they could be helping us on the website with developing materials or telling us what they think. They could be going on our walks and telling us what they think. They could be looking for things in their neighborhoods or in their churches that might link to the Pastons that we haven't yet seen. It's a live thing, and also ideas about how we can make it still more attractive and part of the offer of Norfolk to people visiting or people interested in the history of the county. So it's wanting people to feel that this is a Norfolk story, and we want everybody to join in and contribute, because that's what we've been trying to do, is to bring it to people so they can do that. A more specific line, following on what Karen was saying about the walks, I mean, this is very much a new area. We've all enjoyed walking, I think, because of the lockdown, obvious reasons, but walking is becoming a very interesting area, and the possibility of being able to go on a walk, which actually not only makes you feel better because of the fresh air and the exercise, but also can sustain you because of the thoughts that come with you and the ideas that come along with it. And I think that's almost an experiment that we're almost pioneering, I think, now with our walks. And we'd really like people to tell us, you know, what are they getting from our walks? Are there other things we can add to the walk experience that they find helpful? And so we can provide something that really is a lasting support to people in the county who do the walk. So I think a general is any number of ways they can help us and come to the exhibition and see some more clues about where you can get involved. But also the walks are there on the walks website, and they are waiting for people, please, to do the walks. Tell us what you think. If you've got some ideas, then we'll incorporate them with great pleasure.
Excellent. And again, a long list from Rob of lots of things people can do, but what else is there, Karen?
I think I'll draw attention to two other facets of how people can become involved. There's obviously this series of talks that we're part of today. So every Wednesday, right up until the end of October, there's a talk going out from the NRO. These talks forthcoming have archivists, have people who have developed new research discoveries, academics, but also historical novelists, dramatists, the other people who are trying to tell the Paston story. So hopefully there's a sort of sense of the new discoveries about the Pastons, but also how do we tell these stories? How do we reach different audiences? There's also a few workshops coming up with the NRO. One's going to be about weaving your story. Okay, we've got all this archive evidence from the Pastons. What if you have a family collection of, and can you curate that? Can you develop and weave your own family story? Through to those of you who might be a little bit more digitally orientated and interested in, if you've got a load of data, how do you visualize that data? Are there different ways and different free software platforms that we can use to do that? So that's very much the other ways in which you can find out a little bit more about the story beyond the exhibition. But the great exciting news, I think, on top of everything that we've already mentioned, is that we've teamed up with you guys at the NRO to create 2 free online courses which tell us how to actually read those letters. Okay, you can go and visit our website, you can see them, you can see how other people have edited or translated them, but what if you want to get your hands on the actual original letters and want to read them? So no prior experience needed. But one course is on, okay, well, what about this funny old handwriting? What are some clues towards the 16th to 18th century material? And then the other one's what I'm kind of calling an archives hacks course. Okay, so you've got a big will or a testimony or a legal document. How can you zoom in and find out the information that you need? And hopefully that will inspire people to look at the Paston material, but also material generally from the 16th to 18th centuries, and get people in using Norfolk Record Office material or going online and looking at the digitized versions. So those archive online courses are also coming up from September.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be. I would say this, but I'm sure they'll be really good actually. And it's, one of the things I'm always keen on is giving, archives are about people coming in and using the material and finding out for themselves.
Yeah.
So they can use the raw evidence to draw their own stories, and if they get lots and lots of that evidence, they can visualise the data through one of the courses as well. And we've all become much more adept at understanding visualised data over the last 18 months, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
All are welcome to visit the Norfolk Record Office to see the Paston Footprints exhibition, open now until the end of October. And here's a map of Paston country. Remember to visit our walks website to find out more about the walks you can go on in the village of Paston, Bacton, Motby, Gresham, Blowfield, Oxnead and Norwich. Visit pastonfootprints.co.uk. You can also dig deeper into the Paston story by visiting the Paston Footprints Community Research Portal at thisispaston.co.uk. thisispaston.co.uk. Here you can find out more about the key Paston hubs marked on this map, as well as many other places, both in Norfolk and beyond. You can explore key themes to be found in the Paston letters, and explore the letters themselves via the editions database. Or if you have children or grandchildren or are teachers, you may be interested in our educational resources designed for Key Stages 1 to 4. Or view the 3D Paston building reconstructions and find out the story behind how these were created. Here's a little taster of just one of the 3D building reconstructions.
Trust Lord Malanes to behave civilly. Our men are afraid that they will take possession by force. But it will not be easy. The houses here are so low that no one can shoot out with longbows, even if we might soon have need.
Well, that's all of my questions, both of you. Thanks very much. That's been really fascinating. We've got the exhibition to look forward to. We've got lots of really good talks coming up. And of course, there's all the other things as well. Lots of walking to do and the legacy, which will go on for years and years to come. So thank you both very much.
Thank you, Gary.